What's up, everybody? Let's try this again. Here we are with the Pastoral Update for May 24th, 2022. I started a minute ago. I didn't like what I was doing, so I'm starting over. But this is the first Pastoral Update since we had March of 8th, 2022. We took a couple month break, but we're back now. The reason I took a break was I just felt like we were spending so much time with each other. And I think that's great, and I love you guys, but I didn't want you to get tired of media that comes out from here, because we had Sunday mornings, Sunday school, Sunday nights, Sunday morning, Sunday school, Sunday morning worship. We had Wednesday mornings, Wednesday nights. We had Friday morning Bible study. We were having other pastoral cares. We got daily devotionals and whatnot. And so I just felt like we should take a break. But now that we won't see each other through the week into the summer months, I thought we'd start these pastoral updates back again. And as we do, we'll talk through different aspects of the faith. Also want to remind us that given the fact that school is coming to an end this week, and we give God thanks and praise for a wonderfully successful and safe school year, and we look forward to what's going to take place into the summer and how God's going to grow our families, and we're going to enjoy vacations together, and we're going to go to summer camps, and we're going to do all those kinds of things. We give God thanks for a great, successful year. We look forward to and we pray in advance for the summer. And as we do that, we will be taking a break from our Wednesday activities, our midweek gatherings. So we won't have Wednesday morning Bible study tomorrow or for the rest of the summer through the middle of August. We won't have Wednesday night tomorrow night or for the rest of the summer through the middle of August. We'll miss each other, but we think it's necessary to have this break as families are going in different directions and doing those kinds of things. With that said, I'm going to reinstitute or bring back kind of our virtual Bible studies. That's going to begin but next Wednesday. So it'll be the first Wednesday of June. We'll start next Wednesday with a Bible study that'll get us through June and July and into August, and we'll do it weekly. My goal is, if I'm in town, to do it live at noon. If not, it'll be pre-recorded and sent out to you, but it'll be there for Wednesday. We'll have some time to do some Bible study, thinking through how we can grow in our understanding of God. I think in the summer we're going to start a new sermon series next Sunday. Not this coming Sunday, but the next Sunday, we're going to start a new sermon series. And I think right now I'm going to work through some of the prayers of Paul's epistles and think about how Paul prays for the churches and the context in which the prayers come about. And maybe God will encourage us to pray for one another in that way. We'll also spend some time in some of the epistles. Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians are always great. The Timothy and Titus epistles are great, but we don't spend a lot of time with 1 Thessalonians, 2 Thessalonians. We'll dive into those as well. And so we'll just kind of work our way through some of those epistles, emphasizing prayers, emphasizing commands of the grace of God through the summer. As I wrap this pastoral update up, I want to take just a moment to remind you, and I know many of you are here or certainly tuned into, maybe listened on the radio, watched online, of Reverend Lee Sheldon's sermon this past Sunday. Now, Lee came and gave a great presentation during Sunday school. He gave a great presentation during Sunday morning worship. And during that time, he talked about the growing need around the world for the Associate Reformed Presbyterian Church, the General Synod, to send missionaries to train pastors of indigenous congregations. So in Pakistan, he talked about the importance of training the pastors there, because so many Christians in Pakistan are Christians in name, but there's wrestling with getting the theology, the belief system to the heart. And so they don't really understand what it's to have the life transformation of Jesus. And the pastors aren't educated, the pastors aren't trained to be able to help them. And so the importance for us is to come alongside of them and help train them and provide for them the foundation, the bedrock that God has given to the Western world, and really encourage them from a theological point of view, politics aside. This is theological truth, biblical truth, to help them grow in discipleship. Because Jesus sent the church to make disciples, to baptize them, that's conversion, and then to disciple them, to teach them all that I've commanded you. He also talked about doing it in Rwanda. And Rwanda's a really cool story. The government's saying churches will be shut down if they don't have training, if pastors don't have training, at least some training by 2023. And we've been given the opportunity by the government to come into that country and to offer theological training to those pastors. What a blessing God has given us in His grace. No one have ever thought this, but God is doing it in a miraculous way. During Lee's message, he talked about Ephesians chapter 3, verses 20 and 21 in particular, that says, "Now to Him who is able to do far more abundantly than you could ever ask or imagine, according to the power at work within us, to Him be the glory in the church both now and forevermore." And so Lee just really wrestled with Paul's words there and gave us two stories in his sermon, his own personal testimony and the testimony of a man named Benjamin, and how God worked those things together to bring about these opportunities for us in the advancement of the gospel in 2022. God's working. Lee gave us another statistic that said by 2060, 40% of the world's Christians will live in Africa. I mean, this is an opportunity to get on the ground at the beginning of a swell of conversion and revival that is predicted based off trends that we've seen, and we give God praise for that. And so we are excited about that opportunity. And I got to thinking personally about that challenge and about the message that Lee gave us and challenged us to have bigger views of God and bigger thoughts of God, as well as bigger prayers and bigger ask of God. And I got to thinking, why do I struggle sometimes with big ask and big prayers and big views of God? And why do I wrestle with it? And I don't know if you're like me, but you do. And your view of God is small. Your view of God is limited by the realm of what you consider to be possible. And the ask that you have is reflective of your view of God. And so as I wrestled with that, I started thinking, why do I struggle with asking for God for big things? Why do I struggle dreaming of big things for God to do? Because nothing's too big for God. And I think the answer really kind of several things came to mind. First of all, I think it's really a question of unbelief. The Pharisee and the publican prayed in Jesus' parable, and the Pharisee prayed, "Lord, thank you that I'm not like him." And the publican said, "Lord, I believe, help my unbelief." And so we all wrestle with unbelief. We've trusted Christ, but we still struggle with unbelief. We talked about this when we looked at the disciples in John 21. Why didn't they notice Jesus? Why didn't they recognize Jesus on the shore? Maybe it's because they just weren't focused in on the possibility that the resurrected Lord could come join them where they are. I think it's there. I think there's sin in my life, sin in your life, I'm sure. I'm not pointing the finger at you because I realize I've got tremendous sin in my life, and sin ultimately comes from unbelief. Do I believe God's good? Do I believe God's provision is right? Do I believe that God's standard is correct? And so am I rebelling against that? And so that's sin. And so I've got sin in my life, and sin hinders my understanding of God and His grace and His majesty. I think, too, there's just simply a history of discouragement. We get discouraged in life, right? We get discouraged over time. It's been a tough couple years, but we get discouraged. Maybe there's disappointments. We've been disappointed. Maybe our expectations were unbiblical, or maybe our expectations weren't what God had for us. And we thought they should be, and we thought they would be. And as a result of that, God didn't meet those expectations that we had. And so therefore we're disappointed. We're disappointed in God, we're disappointed in His people, we're disappointed, we've been hurt by the church, etc. And so our view of God has gotten smaller. Maybe there's a limited experience with God's grace. I think this is a big one too. We live in a rational world with limited experience of God's grace. Limited experience of God's power. We often say if we were walking with Jesus and we saw the miracles, we would believe. We don't see those. We long for those. But I tell you, I hear prayers answered all the time. Heard of a lady whose body is doing some really crazy things to take care of some illness that's within her body and to bring healing to her that nobody expected, but that's the hand of God, right? And then, so there's a limited experience. And then the last one, I think, is just a lot of times we are afraid. There's fear of an actual answer to our prayers. If I ask for something big, or if I seek for God to do something great through me, He might actually do it. And if He actually does it, then I've got to deal with the life change. I've got to deal with all that happens there. You know, I might pray for somebody to come to faith, and God might bring them to faith, and then I've got to forgive them, or I've got to deal with the reality of the fact now they're Christians. And our relationship has been one of arguing back and forth. We kind of like that tension, and now it's a whole different type of relationship, whole different story. And so there's fear. And so all those things combine to cause us to have a limited view of God. So here's what Lee challenged us to do, and I think it's important for us. Let's confess the sin. Let's confess the unbelief. Let's deal with the discouragement. Let's deal with the disappointments. and let's bring those before the throne of God and say, God, hey, listen, I've been disappointed. I'm discouraged. I'm going to lay it at your feet. Work through that with God. Let's seek to have larger and more wonderful experiences of God's power. Let's look for the power of God and see if we can experience it. And part of that means we got to start asking for bigger things and letting God work. And then lastly, let's seek that God will help us deal with the fear of our lives with faith. And you know what? Whatever you bring about in the answer to my prayer, I'm going to deal with it, because if you can answer that prayer, you get the power at work within me. It's the power that raised Jesus from the dead, and so it's the power that can bring transformation in my life as well. So let me just encourage you with that, challenge you with that as we go through this week ahead. Think big. Ask big things, deal with the discouragement, deal with the pain, confess the sin, deal with the disappointment before the presence of God and His grace. Begin to experience that grace more fully in your life, and begin asking for bigger things. You guys have a great day. God bless you. Be encouraged in the Lord. Take care. I'll see you next week.